Okay, so today this is class 10, and it's November 30th in 2020. And we're going to talk today about some specific Buddhist Neigong strategies for breathing. But in fairness, you could claim these to be Taoist. You could look at them to be part of the yogic tradition. The Tibetans can put their hands up and say, "Hey, wait, this is our stuff." It's kind of common, really. But I am going to look at a little more deeply at breath itself as a practice. And there's two reasons for this. One, we've been moving along a pretty specific curricula to this point, and for anybody that hasn't checked that out, I'd simply encourage you to take a look at the earlier YouTube videos, and you can go right through the class up to this moment. And there's been a very logical and consistent approach getting us there. But also, this unit itself functions kind of as a standalone practice, I would say, that just focuses on the techniques of breathing. Now, for most of us in the West, the idea that the breath is even a thing you can study is kind of odd. It doesn't show up in the curricula anywhere in any high school athletic curriculum that I know of. You'll have cardio and uh, strength training and flexibility and all kinds of stuff. Breath doesn't show up as a topic, neither does chi or a whole bunch of other stuff, actually. And yet, when we study the disciplines inherited from the Eastern traditions, breath is like a really central and major focus, okay? And so typically in Zen practice, what we say is that you want to sit straight in the meditation posture and you want to concentrate your awareness at the lower dantian, which is a couple of fingers, about three sun or three fingers below your navel, and that becomes a point of concentration. And very simply, when we inhale, we want to imagine there's a balloon down here, and as you inhale, the balloon, actually, the balloon expands, and therefore the inhale happens. So by expanding the balloon down here, the breath draws down, and when the balloon collapses, the breath comes out. And that's the typical instruction that's given to anybody who comes to the Buddhist Temple of Toledo or any other Zen center anywhere. That's very standard fare. And there's always the caution given that, most people, most of the time, if you're not training, are breathing up here in the chest. And we point out how that makes the chi rise. Everything is up here and tense. And so when we start to focus lower, everything sinks and becomes rooted and centered, and we become more grounded like this. And frankly, in a beginning instruction, that's already a lot to go over because you've also got to talk about posture and counting the breaths. Okay, so if anybody here has not done beginning instruction to Zazen, I strongly encourage you check it out. It's offered through the temple a couple of times a month anyway, so that's a resource for you. But the reality is, there's quite a bit more research and practice that's within the tradition than there's ever time to really go in, and it wouldn't even be useful, honestly, in those situations. And yet, it is an important part of learning how to be in the body and how to practice with the body. So, in the last class, as I mentioned, I introduced Taoist versus Buddhist breathing techniques. And basically, a Buddhist breathing technique is that there's an expansion on the inhale and a contraction on the exhale, like I just talked about. But the Taoist is kind of the inversion of that, where there's actually a drawing in on the inhale and a release. And this way of breathing is more associated with martial art and generating power. But it also has use in spiritual discipline. Now, today, what I would like to talk about specifically is a topic called guardian chi. Okay, guardian chi is taking energy or chi and using it in such a way that you enhance the sort of energetic immune system of your body. This is called guardian chi, all right, or ki. And in order to do this, what I'm going to have us do is use the breath. And we're going to use the breath and study it in a much more specific way that at first might be a little bit surprising. You might very well think that the exercises I'm going to show you right now, either it's really obvious to you, or you might think that's not possible. Human beings can't do that. But it's probably neither of those. If you think you immediately know what it is, you're probably not seeing it unless you've studied it before, and then it's not that big a deal. And if you think it's impossible, hang with it. It really is. It's definitely doable. It's nothing supernatural or anything, but it's just something most of us don't pay any reasonable amount of attention to, okay? So let's think about Buddhist breathing, meaning expanding on the inhale. And you want to remember that the feeling when you do that kind of breath is that the air is being drawn down because you're creating a vacuum. The floor needs to stay uplifted, not tightened or contracted, but I'm talking about the pelvic floor needs to be kind of held up lightly. And then the hara itself opens, and then that draws the breath down to it. Okay, now that's the basic practice. Now within that, we can develop it further. And so what I'd like you to do is you can try this with me. Just sit back comfortably. And what I'd like you to do, let me just demonstrate for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have us consider that your torso, right, instead of it being just like a big balloon that comes up and like this, what I want to do is practice actually holding in 3 of the 4 sides so that the breath inhale comes out to the open side. So for example, if I take, let's say, well, let's see, what's the easy way to do it? Yeah, so like if I put my hands on my sides, I'm going to hold in my sides very lightly, and I'm going to wrap it around my back, kind of like this. I'm just going to try. I can't really reach, but we'll say, okay? And my imagination is that I'm holding my back and sides, and I'm just touching them lightly. Maybe I'll take this arm and reach it around, something like this. Now, what I want to do is when I inhale, I want to focus on the lower third of my trunk. So I'm going to break the trunk into the low, the middle, and the high, okay? So I'm going to focus on the lower part of the trunk, and I'm going to kind of imaginatively squeeze the sides and the back, right? Like I got a little pillow here. Maybe I'll lean back on that pillow a touch, and then I'll put my sides. So I kind of have this felt sense that I'm creating a little gate. So when I open up, what's going to happen is just this front part is going to come out. So when I open, I feel down to here, this expands, and the air comes down to the belly. Now what I want to do is hold that expansion for a little bit and then release. And the premise here is that when I put my mind in that place and concentrate in it, the chi starts to center there or is drawn there, and then the body moves. So I'm drawing the chi from the breath, my environment, down, and it's coming out only to here. All right, so let's do that just a few times. So kind of close off the sides, close off the back a little bit, and very gentle. Don't make this like a push-up or a squat rack exercise or anything. It's really, really gentle, but what you are doing is concentrating so that just the front area expands. I'm inhaling, holding that out a little bit, and then relax. You never really want to make this strained, but you do want to make it intentional. Now, as I feel that front part of my belly expanding, the lower third of my trunk expanding on the inhale, I want to concentrate my feeling into that area so that I'm really in contact with it. You can totally do this standing. That might even be easier in some ways. And as I concentrate to that spot, what happens is the chi goes there and expands out past my skin a little bit. We've talked about this a little bit before in class about developing your aura. And we'll do maybe one more breath this way. Okay, now, can you do that? Put your hand up. Give me a thumbs up if you can kind of make that go. All right, excellent. Now, if not, it's not too hard. You can do it. You know, if someone's never looked at their breath before, it can be a struggle to not breathe up here, honestly. And so this down here to the front is probably the easiest one to do. But now consider, okay? So like if this is my, say this is my front and my back, what we just did is the front went like that, okay? The front expanded. And the back is just there and the sides are just there. Now what I want to do here is now have the front stay, and when I inhale, just have the sides stay, have the front stay, and just have the back come out. Okay, so now it's going to be like this. I'm going to take my here. Maybe I'll put my arm to my side, so that's the side, and this is the belly, and then this is the other belly. So I'm closing off my left side, my tummy, and my right side. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, and I'm not clamping down, but I'm just touching them so I can feel it. And then when I breathe in, what I want to do is have all the expansion happen behind here. Okay, now it's going to be less physical movement, but you can do it. You can actually have that back part expand and come back, expand and contract. So when I inhale, the lower back is expanding. Hold it there, concentrate on it a little bit, let the energy coalesce, and then release. Inhale, the lower back expands, and then release. There is some muscular movement here. It feels something like a yawn. Like when you do that, it feels like a yawn in your lower back going out, if you do it right. And those clumps of vertebrae, everything just expands a little bit on the inhale. And again, I'm holding my front in, holding my sides in. And basically isolating that point. So let's do this a couple more times. You might find it helpful to close your eyes and feel into your body and just put your attention on that low back and feel your breath expanding the low back. And again, the other hands are just holding, they're placeholders for me. Now, every time you do this and you breathe in, you're bringing chi to that area. Let's do one more. So inhaling, drawing chi to that part in the low back, and then release. Okay. Now, so if we've done something like that correctly, we've had the front and then the back, okay, on the lower third of the torso, right? Now, when you do this, by putting your mind there, the chi starts to accumulate and then the movement starts to happen. And when the breath comes down there, it brings all kinds of circulation. As we've talked about a number of times in this class, circulation is really a major value. You do not want stagnation or numbness, okay? So most of us are in touch with our front side. We're, more predator oriented with our facial structure, right? We're very front aware most of the times. But back is kind of like a blind spot, okay? And so it's very, very common that people have very little intimate sense of their backside. Their back is kind of like a blank spot. It's like we don't feel it, okay? So when you breathe your attention into this low part of the back and expand it, it might be a blind spot for you. It might be a kinesthetically unavailable sensation. But if you concentrate on that point and keep finding out how you can breathe into it very subtly, you'll find that gradually more and more sensation becomes available to you. And you actually can contact and have that back part move and get some movement in there, some life. Okay. Now, let's do the same thing, but we're going to do it with the sides. Okay. So my right side is here. So what I'm going to do is like cover up my left side and my front and my back, and the right side is going to open up. You know, it's kind of like you see a frog and they got the brr, brr. It's kind of like that. You're just kind of holding your hand here and then brr, this one goes, and you hold your hand here and then brr, that one goes. Everybody try it with me. Put your hands here. Choka, yes, and then go brr. Yes, and then go brr. Excellent. You're now Qigong students. Okay, so let's try. So we're going to take the front one, cover the front, and use your left elbow to cover your left side, and your right hand can go on your back, okay? So the opening now is my lower third of my trunk on my right side here. Now you might say, hey, come on, you can't actually do this. Actually, you can. You can have this expand when you inhale, all right? And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring my attention to this point, my lower right side, and as I inhale, I'm sending all the breath there. Hold it and expand, and then release. Again, breathing in and release. And as you breathe in one more time, hold it. And just feel the energy start to permeate that area of the body. And then release. Let's do one more breath this way. Inhale by expanding that part. Expand that part by inhaling. Hold it. And then release gently. And now let's change. So I'm going to block up the lower right side, front and back, and I'm going to let the left side expand when I breathe. So inhaling. Send the breath to the lower left, and then release. And then again. Hold it a little bit, and then release. And one more breath. And then release. Okay. So what you find is you can draw the breath down and then you can put it front. You can draw the breath down and put it back. You can draw the breath down and put it to the right, or draw it down and put it to the left. Does that make sense to everybody? So let me get some feedback from you. Are you able to contact with what I'm pointing to here? And are you having some experience with it? Let's have a little conversation before I do the next step. Don't everybody jump at once. Okay, Kaishan, yeah.
So I can sense it in each of the spots, but to considerably varying degrees. So it's much more immediate and easy and obvious to the front.
Mm-hmm.
Then the back is less sensitive. It seems to take a lot more effort to put that expansive awareness there, and then even more so on the sides, weirdly enough. So
Yeah, well, that's actually the normative trajectory. Usually the front is fairly accessible. You know, especially if you've been sitting zazen for a while and you haven't paid attention to these other elements, usually what people do is sit there and then their belly just goes out and back. And the rest of the body is just kind of like static. And if you see someone who's been practicing correctly for some time, that is not the case. The whole body is breathing. The whole structure is like that. Okay, so it's not just like the front doing this, right? So, and even if someone's not had a lot of that kind of experience, again, it's natural or more front oriented, right? The back is usually more accessible than the sides. Usually the sides are completely blind spots for people, but not entirely, it depends. But it kind of feels like yawning. If you haven't brought chi down to your lower left side, let's say, it feels like you're stretching something, but I want to emphasize that you're not doing a literal stretch, like to any maximal point. What you're doing is very gently bringing the breath down there and kind of leaning it into that area. And you're very gently having it expand. Okay, so it's not a husky thing. It's not like a one more rep kind of thing. It's a very gentle, and then yeah, the back being less sensitive than the front, and the sides being less sensitive than the back is normative for to start.
So then just to quickly follow up with what you just said, then when that breath comes in and we're kind of easing it in the particular direction,
Mm-hmm.
is that easing subtly muscular, or is it like you've said before, where we direct the attention, the key, and then the body follows?
There is a muscular movement, so it is like yawning. There's a physical movement that happens. Okay, it's not just purely imaginative. So
Okay.
like again, if we were in non-COVID times, you could put your hand like on the four parts, touch me here, 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 and there somehow, or have, I do this with Aikido students and just have them put, everybody put their hand there, and I can breathe into that one spot and have it move people over there, or have it move people over here, or have it move people over there. So it's a physical thing like yawning. It's not just an imaginative exercise. And it does feel like you've kind of breathed into the spot.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. All right, anybody else? So on, please. Yeah.
I noticed that at first I was like trying, like forcing, but
Mm-hmm.
it seems like more success happens if it's gentle.
Yeah, you want it's you want to allow it rather than force it. So you have to have a clear image of what you're trying to do, and you have to have your intention and your intent and your attent on that, but you have to relax any kind of force or aggression. So it's like if you're holding an infant, you have your attention hopefully on them, but you're not aggressively, right? You're very, very precisely, but very gently holding the baby. It's something like that. It feels like that. So it's yang on the inside with the intent. That's very yang, but the outside is very soft and very, very relaxed. So you want to have the internal experience of the breath be very, very precise. And then how it manifests out here is increasing the yin, very gentle. Okay. It's kind of like gently moving water onto a dry sponge. You don't want to crack the sponge. You want to gently get more water there, and it'll gently expand. Shokai, you had an observation or something?
So in beginning instruction, when we say you expand in the 6 directions, are we referring to this?
This is a much more in-depth version of that. Yeah. The 6 directions, I don't really want to get into a big conversation about the 6 directions right now, but by the end of this hour, you'll see how that relates. Okay, maybe we'll go there as a close, but I don't want, if I start talking about the 6 directions now, I'll go off on a different, very interesting and awesome subject, but like quickly pause that one. Or for now, I should say, okay? Okay, so let's just take the next step, all right? So we've got the front, and then in theory, we have the back that we can access, and we have each of the sides that we can access, okay? Now, there's 2 ways to go with this. One is to then, let me just say what I would like you to do instead of what we could do. There's lots of things we could do. There's lots of ways to look at this. Here's what I should like us to do next. Next, you've got your torso, okay? And you've got the lower band, the middle band, and the upper band, like this orbit, and the lower orbit. So what I'd like us to do is do the same exercise in the middle orbit. So this is right like where my rib cage ends and the sternum's kind of here. That's the middle part. The lower danchen is here, and the upper sort of throat notch and stuff is up here. So what I want to do actually is, now let's try it the other way. Put your hand in the front part. Now what I want to do is have just this part expand. Last time what we did is close off all the other sides, the back, right? And then now put your hand to this middle part and breathe to it when you inhale. So this part is going to expand. So I'm going to breathe in. And I'm just kind of lightly closing all the lower parts and all the upper parts and the sides and just letting the breath hit here. And then release. Inhaling to this point, hold it, and then exhale. And then inhaling again. You find that internally you can steer the breath to this point and then let it out. And then release. Now, if all you've ever done is have deep belly breathing, it might seem very counterintuitive to you that you would want to hold that in, but right now you do. It's another exercise, right? Hold this in, let the breath spill out up top. Let's do one more this way. And release. Now take your other hand and put it on your back right behind there. So I'm doing this kind of thing, okay? And I'm going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to inhale and only this part's going to move. So as I breathe in, steer the breath to that point and allow your body and your muscles to do what they need to do to accept the breath. Hold it there for a little bit and then release. And again, draw the breath into that point. And then release. Okay. Now let's try the right side. And again, this is the low part down here, you know, and then this is the mid part, and then this would be the upper part. So we're going to go the middle part here. You can just lightly put your hand there and just, again, bring the breath to that point so that this is what expands on the inhale. So, and don't worry about doing this perfectly, by the way. Just do it, like that, and it's better for you. If you obsess about being perfect, you won't be able to do anything. Let's do one more. Breathing in. And then relax. Now, as I do that myself, and I'm not completely new to this practice, obviously, but when I do that, all the ribs open up and they open out. And again, if you put your hand here, you could feel my body do that. And as I do that, this is doing nothing. This is doing nothing. This is doing nothing. All these other areas are stopped. And this is the only area that's moving. Now let's try it on the other side. Okay. So I'm going to breathe in to the middle range on my left side. If you just close your eyes and draw your own breath into contact with your hand. And then release. And in a funny way, make those ribs yawn a little bit when you do it. And then release. And then again, draw in. And then release. Okay. So now we've done the same practice with the middle level. Front, back, side, side. Okay. Now I should say at this point that it's not uncommon that if a person has never really breathed deeply into their side, you might trigger body memories. Your body may very well have stored sensations or emotions or moments or what have you in your body. We know that this happens, right? And so it could be the case that as you start to actually bring chi into an area that's otherwise collapsed or stagnated, that some of those feelings or memories or sensations or smells or whatever images from God knows where, they kind of get contacted again, and you want to welcome those and allow them to release. Okay. What you don't want to do is if you start to breathe into this point and you start to suddenly feel, I don't know, lonely or scared or any unwholesome, what you don't want to do is go like this and stop. Okay. Because that just is not helpful. What you'd really like to do if that happens, and I'm not saying it will, but it's not unusual, honestly. If you encounter some sensation, just stay with it and continue to breathe chi into that place in the body. And it's very much like a solar flare. It just goes and then it's gone. Okay. If you pull your attention away, it's like a solar flare that doesn't quite flare off. Okay. And the karmic knot stays there. If you contact it with your attention and the flare happens and you allow it to disperse, then you have discharged some percent of that trauma. Okay, just to say it. Does it make sense to everybody? It's a little bit, I hope it's not too woo-woo sounding, but it is a thing, right? Particularly when you start getting around your heart. That's just how it is, okay? Any questions or comments up to this point so far?
I do.
Isan, it's nice to hear your voice. What are you
Hi.
feeling? Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you, and I noticed this when we were laying on our back and we were breathing into our vertebrae.
Mm-hmm.
And am I doing something wrong if, like, the area that we're working with feels warm?
No, that's not incorrect. In fact, that's quite likely a good sign because
Oh.
as you bring attention to it, energy goes there, circulation comes, and heat can come. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that's good to hear. Thank you, Roshi.
If you start putting things on fire, let me know. Fireball.
Thank you. I'll make a note.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's a physical thing. I mean, if you concentrate on your hand, I mean, we can measure the temperature actually goes up, by putting your attention into the space. Most people never actually stop and put their attention into their body with breath as a means. If you're a bodybuilder or a martial artist or a yoga person or a runner or something, you encounter the body according to the needs of that skill set. And that's awesome, right? It's just there's another skill set, which is the breath by itself, right? Being able to bring breath into every area of your body is a massive key to longevity and health. It's a massive key to longevity and health. Being able to bring chi and oxygen and energy into all the cells of your body with your breath as an anchor, massive addition to longevity. And also, as it turns out, it really brings resiliency and capacity to your lungs, right? And right now, this is super relevant, okay? If you've got a set of lungs that have got good movement of energy in all the nooks and crannies therein, and they're used to expanding and moving, then it's like having an athletically developed set of lungs, okay? As opposed to having a bunch of lungs that are kind of collapsed underneath and just go in front like this. You've got like a whole bunch of your lung capacity that basically is underused, all right? And then if some virus comes in there and starts giving your lungs some shit, well, they're at a deficit compared to where they would be if your whole lungs are open and used to working. Does this make sense to everybody? Okay, so I mean, if you look on CDC and different doctors talking about things to do, I've seen enough of these videos where people are saying, if you catch this thing, don't sit there and be static. Move, breathe, stretch, keep things moving along. The last thing you want to do is just kind of sit there and slump down and have everything collapse, right? What I'm saying is it's been known for thousands of years, this practice of breath for nurturance of health and longevity in the body. So it took a pandemic for people to notice. Oh, well. Okay. All right. Any other questions or anything before we do the next step? Good. All right. So then the last one, well, not really, but the next one is the upper band. Okay, now usually what we say is, oh, you don't want to be breathing up here because tension, you want to bring everything to the low point, and that's absolutely correct. Okay, most people are only up here and only up the front. However, what we really do want to do ultimately is have the whole body breathe. The whole body breathes. Okay, and so we don't want this to be, it's not like it's bad to breathe up here, actually. It's just if that's all you're doing, it's not good. Okay, so let's put our hand on the front here and sort of imagine you've got a corset or a girdle or other hands or something on all the other areas, and it's just this front part that you're going to actually expand when you inhale. See, for all you Zen students who spent decades not breathing up here, now is your chance. Go for it. All right, and just draw the breath right to that point and expand it. And then hold it and release. Now in the beginning, if you're a little bit muscular about it, it's better than just sitting there hoping. But eventually, more and more breath. One more, inhaling. There it is. Okay, now if you can do it, behind you. Okay, so it's exactly the opposite side. If you can just get your hand back there, or, you can have something else, reach it if you can't touch or what have you. But the idea is you're going to have that back part expand. All right, exactly opposite this, kind of between the shoulder blades. So breathing in, draw the energy to that place, hold it, and release. Again. One more. Good. And then now we get to the sides. So take your right arm and sling it up here. Just put it in storage for a minute. Set it up here so it's out of the way. Stick it up on the shelf, Shokai. Go ahead. There you go. And then here we are. Okay. So now I'm just going to breathe to this point and have it expand. And just relax your right hand. That's not doing anything. This is where you're going to breathe to. Very good. Again, inhale. Just notice how good it is, how good it feels to actually bring chi into all those cells. I'll do one more here. Beautiful. All right, now let's flop over. Put the other arm in storage up here. Just stick it up out of the way. My right hand is going over to my left side, and I'm going to breathe into it. So breathing in, feel into that area. Try to relax everything else. Just steering the breath to that area of the body. One more time, breathing in. Excellent. And then relax. Okay. So let's just review what we did here. We noticed that, let's say this is your trunk, okay, and that's your front. We noticed that there's low, middle, and high, and we've got front, back, right, and left. All right. So what we did is say we're going to move the front out on inhale, the back out on inhale, the right side, and the left side. And we do exactly the same procedure for the middle and for the upper. Not so complicated in theory, right? Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions on that much? Okay. So on, please.
Like everything else, seems like this is going to take practice.
Yeah. It will. The nice thing is you can do this anytime. You can do this absolutely anytime. You know, if the conversation has gone a bit dull, you can just start. You know, no one has to know. It's fine. All right. Now, furtherness. Okay, furtherness. Remember the overarching theory, or the not the theory, but the approach we're working on is guardian chi. Okay. If you search around in the various texts in the ancient and the modern and talk, search guardian chi, what you'll see is various ways of basically sitting there, and the whole body is surrounded by a bubble, and you just keep expanding into it, and it just fills with energy. And that's not incorrect, obviously. But what I find is when you have students try to do that, they don't know what the fuck they're doing, and it just doesn't happen. Actually, nothing happens when you do that. What I've seen is if you take and actually focus on the different spots in your torso and get good to directing the energy to them, then you have a chance at actually building the guardian chi in these areas, front, back, right, and center. Okay, does that make sense? Then what we want to do is do both the front and back and the sides, low, middle, and high. Okay, so for example, like if I'm going to do the front and back low, I can either contact the point I'm going to breathe into or shut the other points off. It doesn't really matter, whichever one feels right for you. I'm just going to say contact the front and the back, and I'm going to breathe to expand just those 2 points. Now remember, the pelvic floor has to stay slightly held up. You don't clench it, okay? But it's not loose. It's just a little bit intent up to make the seal, okay? So try that with me if you would. I'm going to stand now. Usually I like to do these practices standing, but you can do them sitting just fine, okay? So I'm going to do the front and the back. I'm just going to breathe and feel both of those expand. Now, obviously, if I can't get my back to expand at all, I'm not going to be able to do it in combination. So you would do that, the procedure is you would do that first for a while, but just moving ahead so you can see it. Inhale and expand those. And then try the sides. I'm going to breathe to the sides. Again, the lower sides. And your viscera are moving. Your organs, your internal organs, everything is actually moving when you do this. It's not wishful thinking or imagination. Okay. And I do the same thing up at the middle level. So I'm going to do front and back at the mid level and just only let those expand. Fill up the balloon, hold it there for a minute, keep your awareness in both points, and then release. Breathe in front and back. And then release. And then again. Good. And then let's do the sides. So I'm at the mid-level and the sides. So it's kind of like between the, well, mid-level, you figure it out. It's a little bit below the ribs, floating ribs. So breathing, I'm just going to have these sides expand in the mid-level. If there's one of these that's particularly vexing, obtuse, and inaccessible, be grateful that you found it. And make sure you give that attention, because that's an area of your innards that are probably pretty stuck. Okay, now let's move up to the higher level, the highest level. Same thing, front and back. And just to say it, we're not talking massive amounts of movement. Obviously, as you're up here, the movement's going to be less than when you're down here at the belly, and that's fine. One more breath this way. Good. And then last, the sides. So I usually have the back of my hands if I'm doing it like this, so it's just easier for me to feel them. It's just a point of contact, really. So I'm going to be up here, just below the armpit, and breathe to these sides so they expand. So breathing in, expand up to that point. Don't flex, just expand. And then release. Your body is moved by your breathing. You're not just flexing your muscles. Your muscles are moved because the balloon of the breath is expanding the shell of your body. Breathing in, hold it there, keep your attention there. Let the area suffuse with your intent and ki, and then release. Okay, good. Now observe. Sometimes you'll see Qigong or Tai Chi or Neigong practitioners doing things like this. There's a lot of movements that are flowing. Just as an example, okay, a low, not low, but an entry-level way is you touch it and you expand it. Okay, because I'm touching it. Or I touch the rest and shut it off and expand it, okay? Next is you can actually put your hand out here. Okay, so I'm away from my torso. I'm not touching my hand. I'm not touching my belly anymore. And I'm going to expand the same way. And you make the movement with your hand. And you draw the breath down here. Your hands are a very potent magnet for qi. Okay, we are evolved to have very high tactile sense. Okay, hunting, eating, music making, etc. Okay, so if I concentrate here and breathe out, and I have the qi pool there, this is very effective. This is a little more intermediate level. I can do that with the sides here, this way. So I no longer need to touch them. I know where my sides are. I'm good. I can just use this movement to turn the volume up a little bit. Okay. And then the back, same, just like this. You can also go this way with the back and just go here. So in other words, my hands are like as though my hands are behind me, and just draw in this way, and that influences the back. So for example, I can do kind of at random, watch, I'll do like here. And then sides. And then back. This is the high back. This is the mid back. This is the low back. Sides, low, middle, high, and then front, low, middle, high. Can you see how that works? Basically, I'm contacting it this way and helping to steer the qi. This is intermediate level. Okay. Advanced level, you don't need any hand pyrotechnics. You can just concentrate there with your mind alone and do it just fine. Okay, so you don't need to have a trigger or an anchor or something like that. I'm just pointing this out so you understand it. I don't expect anybody to. If you try to do that too soon, you end up just doing nothing because you ain't got it. So don't worry about it, but just know that it exists, okay? Then later, final level, you don't need to connect this with your breath at all. The breath is a temporary expedient means to get you used to putting your mind into the different places in the body. Eventually, your mind can completely fill your body and your breath is completely natural. That's the highest. The highest level is actually the ordinary, where the way we ought to be. These are all exercises to kind of get us to that place. And then one more distinction just before I take final questions for the evening session. We did front, back, side, side, okay? There's also diagonals. Okay, so you once, and I don't want you to mess with diagonals until you're pretty good with front, back, right, and left, because these are the more blatant and frankly more salient ones. But once you feel like you can actually connect with the front and the sides and the back fairly well, just rotate it a quarter so you've got an X going through your body as opposed to a plus sign. And you can do the same thing to the diagonals. So you got your front diagonal, low, middle, high, and back diagonal, low, middle, high on both sides. Okay, and eventually, like I say, all of these are expedient means for your mind to be able to contact your torso and to fill it with chi, breath, and intent. So one thing you could do for those who've been practicing along, we've done the standing posture, and then we introduced pulsing, right? And then what you could do is after you've done pulsing a little bit, you can shift from pulsing. This is Bodhidharma's first standing exercise. So you do that. And I'm being purposely vague about how much. You do it until your intuition tells you to move on. Okay, that's how I think it's the best way to do it. If you get in the mindset of I've got to do 50 sets, 20 reps, 30 times or something like that, it's just a little bit crazy making. So I like to just feel into it. But you stand, do all the standing practice we did, come here and do some pulsing, maybe 5 gates breathing. If this is unfamiliar, look at the earlier videos. It's all explained in detail. Okay, and then start doing some guardianship breath. You can do it by putting your hands to those places and breathing into them. Get acclimated to that. Okay, and then do it with your hands at a distance. This helps you to pull the chi out into your aura. You imagine the chi coming out to meet your hands when you do this. And what you're doing is just bringing the energy in and filling up that aura. Okay, and then later, you don't need to do the hand stuff anymore. Eventually what happens is you can just take your whole torso and just expand the whole thing very gently, but very powerfully. Okay. When you really do this well, your spine is there. And then all of you expands on an inhale, starting from low and it goes up like this and comes down. Kind of like that. And all of your whole trunk is breathing. In fact, you're breathing out past your skin. Okay. So, comments, questions, expressions of confusion, disbelief, hatred. Yes, Brenda.
Hi, I'm new.
Hey.
You know that. I'm in the beginning, I was feeling a spine, a lot of vertebrae.
Yeah.
And I thought, I must be taken in the air a little bit too deep, too aggressive. Is that?
No, I wouldn't say that. Actually, the fact that you're contacting your vertebrae is awesome. That's really, really good, Brenda, because most people don't have any sense of their vertebrae unless they're in pain, right? So actually, yeah, it's like yawning. I mean, your skull goes a little bit. It's not quite that dramatic, but you are physicalizing the breath expanding. And when you do the back, actually, yeah, the vertebrae, I'm in contact with the vertebrae and I'm feeling them.
Okay.
In fact, I'm pretty sure, I don't remember exactly what class ago it was, but I introduced a lot of stuff specifically about contacting the vertebrae in the spine. And so you might find some useful guidance in that class. I don't remember which number it is if anybody does, but you can find it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Gyoshiki, please. Yeah.
Hi, I really noticed it on the sides. That
Mhm.
was really easy. But then I noticed, which I couldn't get as much in the back, but if I pressed, not aggressively, but if I just pressed more firmly anywhere, then I really could feel it more in the back. So that was just like a little training wheel for me, just to press just to press not just kind of, but really firmly pressed, and then I could feel it. But the hardest part, of course, is between the shoulder blades. And I wanted a clarification of what you meant by the hands, or that your hands are in front of you, but you're imagining them pulling out in the back.
Well,
That
it's
part
not.
I didn't.
Yeah, it's not so much that I'm imagining them. They literally do connect to the vertebrae, as Brenda was saying. Like each finger actually goes through and connects to very specific vertebrae in the back. And when I move my hands up and down, they connect to the different vertebrae in specific ways. So when I'm trying to breathe to my upper back, like between the shoulder blades, I'm going to do it like
Right.
this.
Okay. I'll
I'm
try
not gonna
that.
I'm not gonna try to like do like this,
Yeah,
because I just,
that just felt constricted. But
yeah,
okay, so you're
this is
just
here, this is the back, and this would be the front. Okay, there's the back, that's the front. Actually, let's
so
see.
when you're inhaling, they're going that way.
If I'm
Yeah.
expanding my back, it's like I got my hands
Right.
of a friend in front of me, and they're doing it, and their back.
Okay,
This is their
got
back,
it.
and it expands. This becomes my back. See, so I'm making
Yeah,
a
I can
bow.
feel that.
I'm making a bow on my hand, and it's drawing in. And if I'm doing the top part of my back, it's this. If I'm doing the middle, it's this, like so. And if I'm doing the lower part, it's this one. And it's as though I'm putting my hands on someone ahead of me.
Right. That's a good cue.
Yeah. And then if I'm doing the front, it comes this way. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it can be, it can be a lot of different ways, honestly, but that gets you in the ballpark of it. Okay.
Yeah, the sides. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an important part of my practice. I'll just go out there, and after I've done some standing for a while, I'll just like feel where my body wants me to go, and I'll just breathe energy into those parts. But I'm in contact with them, and I can it's like tuning the guitar, honestly. Sometimes the B string's a little out, sometimes it's the D string, sometimes it's the two E strings, sometimes all of them are a little out. And you can kind of feel what's not quite full, and just open it up a little bit. And it goes up into the skull, and it includes the limbs. It doesn't actually end at the torso, just to say it. I'll cover that in depth maybe in the next class. For now, I mean, just getting in touch with the torso is a pretty big job, actually. All right. Okay, well, listen, I'm grateful that you chose to spend an hour this way, and I do just want to say that this is particularly relevant for anyone who's at risk with this COVID-19 stuff. And it turns out everybody's kind of at risk. It's not really just for the elderly, as we've learned. Okay, so I'm not charging anything for this at all. I'm just making this freely available to folks. And if you find it useful, please share, let people know about it. And maybe they'll get some benefit out of it. I don't know. I think these arts are not well known or represented, and some people do know, and then they charge a ton, and it's inaccessible. So. That being said, Shokai, would you dedicate merit for us?
So maybe dedicate the merit of our efforts tonight to all of those who are ill, who are suffering from COVID or other respiratory illnesses, all of those who take care for them, their loved ones, their families. May they all be well. May it be so.
May it be so. And closing thing, I do have a text service. If you're not on that and you would like to be, send me a text message to 419-863-1985. Okay. That's 419-863-1985. And I just send little alerts when I'm doing stuff. And you can stop at any time, but send a little message there. And we've got a Buddhist Temple of Toledo 6-week introduction. What is it? Establishing the Buddhist practice class that starts on Tuesday. That's going to be super cool. Actually, starts tomorrow, right, Shokai? Yeah. Kaishin affirmed, yeah. So yeah, that's pretty cool. If you're interested in exploring that, it's not too late to connect with it. It's same here, right? Same place, Tuesday nights. You can check the Buddhist Temple of Toledo Facebook page for that. I suppose there's information there on it. Okay, any other announcements or anything I should say from those who know better than I? All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Kirk, click.